All right, good evening, everyone, and welcome to the Litchfield budget hearing. I'd like to call the meeting to order tonight, and we'll start with the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice. I'd like to thank everyone for coming out this evening and for those watching at home. If you've been following along with our budget committee process, this is the culmination of many weeks and months of works with our budget hearing. Tonight's an opportunity for folks to hear about upcoming warrant articles that you'll have an opportunity to vote on in March, as well as ask any questions about the budget or the associated warrant articles. And our flow for this evening is we're going to go through the town budget and the town warrant articles. We'll pause, have an opportunity for people to come up and ask questions, which is down here in the front. And then we'll transition over to the school side. We'll go through the school warrant articles and also have an opportunity for school questions before we conclude this evening. I do want to remind people that we are going to hold a budget committee meeting immediately concluding the hearing. We'll meet down here in the corner, probably about 2 to 3 minutes once the hearing concludes. And that is because we have to revote 3 warrant articles, and I'll speak to those when we get to those this evening. All right, first I want to introduce our budget committee members. My name is John David Sun, and I am the chair. Unable to join us this evening due to a work trip is Scott Taylor, who is our vice chair. Sitting down front here is Mr. Doug LaPlante. Sitting in the back right over here is Mr. Eric Olson. Unable to be here this evening for personal obligation is Ms. Carrie Douglas. Walking in the door as we speak right now is Mr. Derek Barca. Sitting over here to the right is Mr. Brian Burke. And then our school board representative, Mr. Andrew Cutter. And our select board representative, standing up in the back, is Mr. John Brunel. So the membership of the budget committee shall be comprised of such number of members and other representation as determined by town meeting adoption of RSA 32. The town of Litchfield adopted the provisions of the municipal budget law by petition at the 1969 annual town meeting, Article 10. And at the same meeting, the town voted to elect 6 budget committee members, which was Article 11. In 2013, the town voted, Article 14, to increase the elected membership from 6 to 7 members. Members serve staggered terms of 3 years. And on the previous slide here, and I'll go back just so you can see it, those years that you see there are the end of terms for those people. All right, we're going to begin going through the town budget. I'm going to walk us through the town budget process, and then we'll go through the warrant articles. The town budget process began with the Board of Selectmen, and they began their budget process in August. They received their proposed budget by department heads, and that proposed budget was $8,530,522. This represented a 4.3% increase over the 2025 default budget, and had that budget $94,899 over the tax cap. As a reminder, the town has a tax cap that the budget committee is legally obligated to get that budget under, and I'll speak to that a little bit more as we move through these slides. The select board met in August and made adjustments to the budget totaling $9,769. Those reductions came from the following areas. There was a reduction in tax collector town clerk from full-time to part-time with a reduction of $17,699. There was a reduction in zoning of $750, and there was the addition of planning hours in the planning budget for $7,015. Those reductions moved the budget to $85,130 over the tax cap. Later in September, the Board of Selectmen made additional reductions to the budget totaling $19,133. Those reductions included recreation for $10,708, legal for $2,500, library for $2,500, and IT for $1,875. Additional reductions were also made by the Board of Selectmen during the review process totaling $26,873, and that put the budget over the tax cap by $26,322. Moving into the end of September began the budget review process with the Budget Committee. And over the course of 2 meetings, September 25th and October 2nd, The Budget Committee had an opportunity to hear from various department heads and from the town administrator and administration to ask questions about various parts of the budget at that process. The Board of Selectmen had not officially closed the budget yet. They still had an opportunity to vote on items. And so during that Budget Committee review process, the Board of Selectmen took additional actions at their meetings in September and October. These actions included changes to the fire department, zoning, legal, police, and town clerk. On October 30th, tax setting and revenues were adjusted for 2026. The Budget Committee began our voting process on the town budget on October 16th, 2025. Actions taken by the Budget Committee that evening included reductions to IT, library, and town meeting, totaling $5,300. At that time, with the conclusion of those votes, the budget stood at $84,346.35 under the tax cap. The Board of Selectmen took additional action at their previous meeting this past week, which increased the budget by $8,076 to account for a new contract with Avatar Services. So in summary for the town budget, the current town budget sits at $8,428,071. That is a 3.2% increase over the 2025 approved budget of $8,160,158, which was the default. And the budget currently sits $76,270 under the tax cap. So now I'm going to walk us through the town articles. There are several of these, so just bear with me as I read through these. Once I conclude reading through the town articles, we'll pause and take any questions on the town side. We're starting tonight with Article 9. Article 1 is election of officers, and then Articles 2 through 8 are zoning articles. If they do not require any, they don't have any financial impact, the Budget Committee does not vote on those, and so we're going to skip past those this evening. So starting with Article 9, the operating budget. Shall the town vote to raise and appropriate as an operating budget, not including appropriations by special warrant articles, and other appropriations voted separately, the amount set forth in the budget posted with the warrant or as amended by the vote of the first session for the purposes set forth therein, totaling $8,428,071. Should this article be defeated, the default budget shall be $8,120,423, which is the same as last year with certain adjustments required by previous action of the town of Litchfield or by law, or the governing body may hold one special meeting in accordance with RSA 4013, 10, and 16 to take up the issue of a revised operating budget only. The majority vote is required on this article. The operating budget estimated 2026 tax rate impact is 9 cents. The default budget estimated 2026 tax rate impact is a negative 6 cents. This has been recommended by the Board of Selectmen by a vote of 5-0-0. This article was previously voted on by the Budget Committee and recommended by a vote of 8-1-0. However, this is one of the articles that we need to re-vote this evening. On the previous slide where there was the addition of the $8,000 for the Avatar contract, that has now been added into the town operating budget. Hence, the Budget Committee will re-vote to recommend or not recommend later this evening. Article 10, police cruisers purchase. To see if the town will vote to authorize the selectmen to enter into a 5-year lease purchase agreement for the sum of $215,752 for the purpose of lease purchasing 3 police cruisers for the equipment for the Litchfield Police Department and to raise and appropriate the sum of $47,366 for the first year's payment for that purpose. The first year's payment in the amount of $47,366 shall come from the unassigned fund balance and no amount to be raised from taxation. This lease agreement contains an escape clause. The estimated 2026 tax rate impact is $0.00. The estimated tax impact for 2027 is 2 cents. Majority vote is required. You can see a table there that outlines for those 5 years the estimated tax impact for each of those years, and then the total payment in that final cell there on the right. This article was recommended by the Board of Selectmen by a vote of 5-0-0. This article was also recommended by the Budget Committee by a vote of 8-1-0. Article 11, modify the optional total and permanent service-connected total disability credit. Shall the town modify the provisions of RSA 7235 for an optional tax credit of $4,000 for a total and permanent service-connected total disability on residential property? Majority vote is required. The 2026 tax rate impact for current veterans only is 0.047 cents. This is some additional information in red here. Of note that there are 36 individuals presently, and they will lose the veterans credit of $750 if passed. They do not lose the $750 if this article fails. Veterans currently receiving the standard credit under RSA 7235, $700, may still receive a credit under either RSA 7228, RSA 7228B, or RSA 7228C. This was recommended by the Board of Selectmen by a vote of 5-0-0, also recommended by the Budget Committee by a vote of 8-0-1. Article 12, modify elderly exemption. Shall the town modify the provisions of RSA 7239A for the elderly exemption from property tax in the town of Litchfield, based on assessed value for qualified taxpayers to be as follows? For a person 65 years of age up to 75 years, $125,000. For a person 75 years of age up to 80 years, $190,000. For a person 80 years of age or older, $240,000. To qualify, the person must have been a New Hampshire resident for at least 3 consecutive years, own the real estate individually or jointly, or if the real estate is owned by such person's spouse, they must have been married to each other for at least 5 consecutive years. In addition, the taxpayer must have a net income of not more than $45,500, or if married, a combined net income of no more than $55,000, and own net assets not in excess of $300,000, excluding the value of the person's residence. Majority vote is required, and the 2026 tax rate impact on this article for current exemptions only is 1 cent. This was recommended by the Board of Selectmen by a vote of 5-0-0. Also recommended by the Budget Committee by a vote of 8-0-1. Article 13, supplemental fire coverage. Shall the town vote to supplement the fire department's budget, $218,400, to allow for increased coverage overnight as necessary to protect the safety and welfare of the residents of Litchfield, and further vote to raise and appropriate the sum of $168,000 for the period of April 1, 2026 to December 31st, 2026. The estimated tax rate impact is 8 cents. It was recommended by the Board of Selectmen by a vote of 4-1-0. It was not recommended by the Budget Committee by a vote of 4-4-1. I'll come back and speak to that here in just a second. There's a table there, right-hand side, that hopefully you're able to see, which estimates the tax impact for each of the 5 years there, shown there. The first year is a partial year, which would occur after elections in March, and then the remaining 4 years are for a full year, so you can see the tax rate impacts associated with those. There are some additional notes down in red at the bottom. There are 2 per diem firefighters and EMT for overnight from 6 p.m. to 6 a.m., just 12 hours times 7 days, 84 weeks times 2 people, $24 per hour, $4,200 a week for 40 weeks. Gives you the dollar amounts associated with that from April 1st to December 31st. One item I did want to speak to because it connects back to the tax cap that I spoke about earlier. Part of the Budget Committee's obligation when we vote, not only do we have to have the budget below the tax cap, but legally we cannot recommend articles that, if approved, would put the budget over said tax cap. There was good discussion around this one during the Budget Committee meeting last week, where I can confidently say that a majority the Budget Committee felt like this was something that was warranted. However, we could not recommend it based on the tax cap obligations. Article 14, additional paving. Shall the town vote to raise and appropriate the sum of $200,000 to supplement the Highway Department's budget and fund additional paving cost within the town of Litchfield? Expenditure of said funds to be the responsibility of the Board of Selectmen in their discretion, if determined to be necessary, and in the best interest of the town. Majority vote required. Estimated 2026 tax rate impact is 10 cents. This was recommended by the Board of Selectmen by a vote of 5-0-0, and was also not recommended by the Budget Committee by a vote of 4-4-1. Same conversation took place. The Budget Committee was not able to support or recommend this due to the dollar amounts associated with this that would put us over the tax cap. Article 15, Ambulance Revolving Fund. Shall the town vote to raise and appropriate the sum of $20,000 to be placed in the Ambulance Revolving Fund as previously established? This sum to come from the unassigned fund balance and no amount to be raised from new taxation. Majority vote required. The estimated 2026 tax rate impact is $0.00. This was recommended by the Board of Selectmen by a vote of 5-0-0. Also recommended by the Budget Committee by a vote of 9-0-0. You can see there the current balance in that fund is $16,949.84, and that we have currently paid $20,483.01 in 2025. The amount paid was $20,483.01. Article 16, establish a capital reserve fund. To see if the town will vote to establish a town vehicle and equipment capital reserve fund under the provisions of RSA 35-1 for replacing or maintaining town-wide vehicles and equipment, and to raise and appropriate the sum of $100,000 to be placed in this fund. This sum to come from the unassigned fund balance and no amount to be raised from new taxation. Further, to name the Board of Selectmen as agents to expend from said fund. Recommendations required. Majority vote required. The estimated 2026 tax rate impact is $0.00. This was recommended by the Board of Selectmen by a vote of 5-0-0. Also recommended by the Budget Committee by a vote of 9-0-0. Article 17, Human Services and Health Agencies. Shall the town vote to raise and appropriate the sum of $21,800 to support human services and health agencies providing services to the town of Litchfield? This sum to come from the unassigned fund balance and no amount to be raised from new taxation. Majority vote is required. The estimated 2026 tax rate impact is $0.00. This was recommended by the Board of Selectmen by a vote of 5-0-0. Also recommended by the Budget Committee by a vote of 9-0-0. Hopefully you're able to see that table in the lower right-hand corner. It gives a list of all of the agencies, their budgets, and their requests as they went through this process. Article 18, Recreation Expendable Trust Fund. Shall the town vote to raise and appropriate $50,000 to be placed in the Recreation Expendable Trust Fund as previously established? This sum to come from the unassigned fund balance and no amount to be raised from new taxation. Majority vote required. The estimated 2026 tax rate impact, $0.00. Was recommended by the Board of Selectmen by a vote of 5-0-0. Also recommended by the Budget Committee by a vote of 6-3-0. Current balance in this Recreation Expendable Trust Fund is $51,416.14. And there was $25,000 of that allocated for the floors at Talent Hall, and that work has not yet been complete. Article 19, Library Earned Time Expendable Trust Fund. Shall the town vote to raise and appropriate the sum of $8,000 to be placed in the Library Earned Time Accrual Expendable Trust Fund as previously established? Majority vote required. The estimated 2026 tax rate impact is $0.004 cents. Not recommended by the Board of Selectmen by a vote of 2-3-0. Not recommended by the Budget Committee by a vote of 0-9-0. The fund balance in this trust fund is currently $1,074.89. This was from the November 2025 reconciliation. Best practices require the balance be equal to the payout of earned time for employees. Just a couple more to go. Article 20, additional town clerk hours. Shall the town vote to increase the weekly hours of the town clerk, one part-time position, from 34 hours per week to a full-time position at 40 hours per week, effective April 1st, 2026, for an estimated annual wage benefit and other related costs of $23,020.99. And further vote to raise and appropriate the sum of $16,162.87 for wage benefit and other related costs for the period of April 1st, 2026 to December 31st, 2026. The estimated 2026 tax rate impact is 1 cent. Majority vote is required. This was recommended by the Board of Selectmen by a vote of 4-1-0. Not recommended by the Budget Committee by a vote of 4-5-0, mainly due to the tax cap obligations. And you can see a table on the right-hand side there, which shows the breakdown of the 2026 costs due to the 9-month period of that, and then the full year cost of that position in 2027. And I don't have to read this one because this one is not impacted by the Budget Committee. Questions on the town side? If you could, when you come forward, Doug, can you make sure that mic's turned on, please? It is, okay. You could just state your name and address, please.
Mary Ann Geist, Center Street.
Hi.
I have a question about warrant article. No tax impact. Last year, it was 250 warrant articles with that same. Seems like we're just repeating year after year after year, throwing more money in funds, and tax impact, but it is, because we just keep paying for it and paying for it. So I was wondering if you could explain a little bit more about that. Why do we keep doing that? Because $250,000 last year was in the slush funds, as I call it. So I was wondering if you could help me out with that.
Sure. I'm happy to start that conversation, and certainly if Ms. Kleiner or Mr. Brunel want to jump in. So I pulled up Article 16 here as an example. So where it says the estimated tax rate impact or no dollars to be raised from new taxation, it's placed like this on the warrant article. It means that the town is not raising and appropriating additional dollars. They're not raising and appropriating this $100,000. What it means is that in order for this to be funded, it has to come from end-of-year fund balance or the unassigned fund balance. So it comes from, a better way to think of it is the savings account that the town has. And so those dollars come from that fund, which means at one point in time, yes, they have been raised and appropriated and taxes have been collected on that, but it's no new taxation, means there's no additional new taxes being raised. This one as an example on this $100,000.
Right. So again, where we have leftover money, is that correct?
And speaking to both the town and the school side, yes, generally at the end of their budget season, there are dollars that are left over that can be attributed to positions that were tried to be filled that weren't able to be filled. It could be attributed to additional revenues came in that were unanticipated or unexpected, either from the state or from interest in the past. So there are different things that can contribute to that. But yes, there are dollars that are typically left over at the end of a budget for both the town and the school side, and different factors can contribute to that.
Okay. But still, the initial budget still keeps going up every year, even though we have this leftover money. I guess I'm just thinking that we're, every year it's another, last year, $250,000 left over. This year, it looks like it's approximately close to $200,000 when I look at these reserve funds, so.
And I'd be happy to invite Ms. Kleiner up here. I know Ed, if you wanted to speak to dollars that we anticipate might be left over at the end of the 2025 budget, I know we're still closing the books on that, because that might help answer part of this question as well, seeing as we're in a default budget, or we were in a default budget.
Sure. So first, I'd kind of like to begin with, the town has a policy that was adopted by the Board of Selectmen, and we're required to keep in the unassigned fund balance 8 to 12%. Standard practice across the state set by the DRA is anywhere from 5% to 17%. So the selectmen's policy is quite respectable. As of the end of tax setting in 2025, the fund balance sits at $3.6 million, which is 11.45%, which is well within that policy set by the selectmen. As of the end of this year, we are still closing out numbers, and there are numbers that, December bills that have not come in. I did look at it prior to leaving the office tonight, and I estimate that we will be anywhere from about 170 to 180 remaining from the budget. That is due to us being very careful because we received the default budget and us not funding two positions or hiring two positions that are very needed within the police department. So we withheld from hiring those positions in order to make expenses. As far as understanding us using that money, we are very careful that if we have the ability to use some money from the fund balance and not raise new taxation, we try to do that. That keeps the municipal budget taxes lower, and it helps to put services into the town that is needed. So some people see it as a savings account. It's not really. The excuse me, the unassigned fund balance also sits in the general fund for cash flow. So that is money that we need to use for cash flow because the town only collects money twice a year, obviously through taxes. But our expenses and our obligations don't only come at twice a year. So we need that money to help us manage the cash flow. And if all the taxes, if all the warrant articles did pass that we have made the, from unassigned fund balance, we would estimate our fund balance still to be at 10.69% as of next fall.
Thank you. Any additional questions or follow-up questions to that? Good evening. Go ahead and state your name and address, please.
Hi, Ronald Blanes. I actually share concerns or comments regarding the use of unassigned fund balance. I've been here since 1989, and I will freely admit for the longest time I was not paying attention to what goes on. And when I went into the voting booth, if I saw a zero tax impact, I thought it was from grants or some other place that wasn't from taxes. And that is clearly not the case, and I admit my ignorance in that regard. The unfortunate thing is I think a lot of the other people see it the same way. What I believe should be done is nothing should come out of unassigned. It should be put forth to the voters as a tax and let them see what the tax impact of that really will be. Ironically, on the town side, you could still use unassigned to pay for it by then voting to move over to pay for it. But my position has always been, and I think some of the selectmen are, but not all, most of them are not, is that as you increase to the maximum that you have of 8%, it should continue to increase, and once you reach that, then amounts of money over that should be returned to the taxpayer. That's how I think unassigned should be handled. I will jump ahead if I can, just to highlight a difference between the town side and
We'll save the school questions until we get there. That's
okay. But I'd like you then to highlight that there is a difference on the town side and the school side in the use of unassigned or fund balance. It's a different mechanism.
That is correct, yes.
Okay.
Thank you, sir. Any other questions or comments this evening on the town side? Good evening, sir. Name and address.
Evening. Mike Parker, 12 Nesmith Court. I have a question on warrant articles 13 and 14. Not recommended by the budget because they could exceed the budget cap.
Yes.
Do we still get to vote on those?
Yes, you do. Good.
And what
good.
happens if we vote on those and they exceed the budget cap?
The legislative body, the town, has the authority to override the tax cap, whereas the budget committee legally cannot. The voters, you all have the ability to override that. So if using this one as an example here, the fire coverage, if this one is passed in March and it puts us over the tax cap because the voters say so, that's perfectly legal.
Okay,
Yep.
thank you.
Thank you. Any other questions or comments on the town side this evening? All right, I'm going to move us school budget. Similar flow, I'll follow the narrative of our budget process and then walk through the school warrant articles and then open it up for any questions on the school side. All right, school budget. The school budget process began with the school budget, the school board and their reviews back in October. We received the budget was complete at the end of October, and then the budget committee joined the school budget review sessions, which were held on November 6th and November 12th. These were joint sessions where they were facilitated by the school board, and they were reviewing the budget and had an opportunity to make motions and vote, but the budget committee was invited to join and ask questions during that process as well. The operating budget was then delivered to the budget committee on October 29th, 2025. The total delivered budget was $27,497,865. This represented a 1.79% increase from the last year's default budget. The school board voted on their budget at their November 19th meeting, and they reduced the overall operating budget by $282,000. $241,000 of those reductions came between special ed transportation, which was $91,000, and personnel, which was $150,000. The budget committee reviewed budget details on November 13th. This was an opportunity for the budget committee to ask additional questions of various department heads and school building administrators. Voting on the school operating budget occurred on December 4th as well as December 11th. On December 4th, the budget committee reduced various budget lines by a total of $8,415.90. And then on December 11th, the budget committee further reduced various budget line items by a total of $162,282. Those budgets, here's a breakdown of those budget committee reductions, which totaled $170,697.90. $158,000 of those reductions came from salaries and benefits. $4,422 were from CHS, $2,382 from LMS, and $5,893.90 from GMS. This put the revised total school budget at $27,045,024.10, and this is the operating budget, which the budget committee reviewed. This represented a 0.12% increase over the previous year's default. In addition to the operating budget, which we reviewed, there are two separate funding sources and mechanisms for the school. The first is food service. That dollar amount is $811,514. And then grants, which the school district receives from the state or from the federal government, is $545,000. This puts the total amount for the school, when you add together the operating, the food service, and the grants, at $28,401,538.10. And now we're going to walk through the school warrant articles. Article 1, the average cost per pupil for the preceding year, as calculated in accordance with RSA 189.75.1a, is $21,147. ELA proficiency is 58%, math proficiency 41%, science proficiency 32%. Shall the Litchfield School District vote to raise and appropriate as an operating budget, not including appropriations by special warrant articles, and other appropriations voted separately, the amount set forth on the budget, posted with the warrant or as amended by the vote at the first session for the purpose set forth herein, totaling $28,401,538. Should this article be defeated, the default budget shall be $28,042,731, which is the same as last year with certain adjustments required by previous action of the Litchfield School District or by law, or the school board may hold one special meeting in accordance with RSA 4013-10 and 16 to take up the issue of a revised operating budget only. This is a majority vote required. The operating budget has an estimated tax impact per 1,000 of 23 cents. The default budget has an estimated tax impact per 1,000 of 7 cents. This was recommended by the school board by a vote of 4-0-0. This was also recommended by the budget committee by a vote of 7-2-0. Both entities have to re-vote this particular warrant article. The budget committee will do it later this evening. The school board will do it at your meeting next week, I believe, next week. And the reason for that is there was actually a $30,000 reduction to this earlier today that ties back to the grants piece that was on the previous page. So the prior amount was $28,431,538. The new amount is $28,401,538. So both entities will need to revote to recommend or not recommend because of that change. Article 2. Shall the Litchfield School District vote to approve the cost items included in the collective bargaining agreement reached between the Litchfield School District and the Litchfield Education Association, which calls for the following increases in salaries and benefits at the current staffing level over those paid in the prior fiscal year? In the year 2026 and 2027, the estimated increase is $263,711. In the year 2027-2028, the estimated increase is $483,100. And further, to raise and appropriate the sum of $263,711 for fiscal year 2027, such sum representing the additional cost attributable to the increase in salaries and benefits required by the new agreement over those that would be paid at current staffing levels. Majority vote required. The estimated tax impact is 13 cents. This was recommended by the school board by a vote of 4-0-0, also recommended by the budget committee by a vote of 6-1. This warrant article does not require any budget committee voting, so we will skip over it this evening. It simply is an opportunity for voters to allow the school board to call one special meeting should Article 2 fail. This article also does not require budget committee voting because it doesn't have a financial impact. However, I am going to read it because I think it is an excellent warrant article. Shall the Litchfield School District authorize the Litchfield School Board to name the baseball field at Campbell High School after James Jimmy Gorman? Coach Gorman was the original baseball coach at Campbell High School, led the Campbell High School baseball team to 6 state championships, majority vote required, recommended by the school board by a vote of 4-0-0. Article 5, shall the Litchfield School District vote to raise and appropriate the sum of $250,000 to be added to the Building Maintenance Capital Reserve Fund established in 2005 for the purpose of funding school capital improvements, building maintenance, and repairs in the Litchfield School District. Majority vote required. The estimated tax impact is 12 cents. It was recommended by the school board by a vote of 4-0-0, recommended by the budget committee by a vote of 8-1-0. There are notes there in yellow and red. The current balance in this fund will be approximately $626,436 as of January 2026. This is after a transfer of $250,000 to fund per approval of warrant Article 5 in March of 2025. Article 6, shall the Litchfield School District vote to raise and appropriate up to a sum of $250,000 to be added to the Capital Improvements Expendable Trust Fund established in March of 2020 for the purpose of funding the study, planning, and cost of new construction or renovation of existing facilities in the Litchfield School District, with this sum to come from the June 30 fund balance available for transfer on July 1 of this year, with no additional amount to be raised from taxation. Majority vote required. Estimated tax impact is $0.00. It was recommended by the school board by a vote of 4-0-0. Also recommended by the budget committee by a vote of 8-1-0. Reading the notes there in yellow and red, the current balance in this fund will be approximately $247,993 as of 1/25. This is after expending $76,586.32 in December and January of the $225,000 approved on August 20th, 2025. to be withdrawn for initial pre-construction services rendered by the hired design construction team for the proposed GMS project. The fund balance less the total authorized withdrawal amount will be approximately $99,580. Article 7, shall the Litchfield School District vote to raise and appropriate the sum of $50,000 to be added to the Employee Benefits Non-Capital Reserve Fund established in March of 2023 for the purpose of funding the payment of negotiated employee benefits, including but not limited to health insurance reimbursements, changes in coverage or policies chosen by employees, severance benefits, and such other benefits as are from time to time negotiated and become contractual obligations of the district, with this sum to come from the June 30 fund balance available for transfer on July 1 of this year, with no additional amount to be raised from taxation. Majority vote required. The estimated tax impact is $0.00. The current balance in this fund is $192,033. Currently, this article is recommended by the school board by a vote of 4-0-0, as well as recommended by the budget committee by a vote of 8-1-0. There was some language change earlier today in this article where the date of March 2023 was changed. I believe it originally said March 2022, and so it now says March 2023. And also the word non-capital was added there at the beginning of the second line. Because of those changes, since the budget committee voted on it last, anytime there's changes to a warrant article, we take the opportunity to revote that. So we will revote this one this evening as well, even though it doesn't state it up here on the slide. Article 8, last school warrant article this evening. Shall the Litchfield School District vote to raise and appropriate up to a sum of $50,000 to be added to the Technology Capital Reserve Fund established in March 2016 for the purpose of funding the acquisition and replacement of hardware, software, and other technology equipment, with this sum to come from the June 30 fund balance available for transfer on July 1 of this year with no additional amount to be raised from taxation. Majority vote required. The estimated tax impact is $0.00. This was recommended by the school board by a vote of 4-0-0, not recommended by the budget committee by a vote of 3-6-0. Current balance in this fund is $83,318. Before we move to questions this evening, there's actually a new piece of legislation that took effect in July of 2025, titled the Mandatory Report to Voters on School Expenses. These slides were put together by the business administrator, Ms. Darling. I'm going to walk us through these slides as well as show that mandatory report with the slides that were put together for that. So once we walk through these, if there's any questions on this particular section, the mandatory report to voters, I'll invite Ms. Darling up to speak to those. If there's any other questions on the warrant articles, the operating budget, we'll take those, I'll answer those, and I'll certainly invite the superintendent or the school board chair up to answer if necessary. All right, the Students First Act. House Bill 1265 was passed in 2024 with the section of the act pertaining to the mandatory posting of school district expenses not taking effect until July 1, 2025. The act requires districts to post data to include average cost per pupil, as well as teacher and administrator salaries with the aim of informing the public of critical information prior to the adoption of a school budget. Reports must be posted in 3 or more public places at least 7 days, excluding Sundays and legal holidays, prior to any meeting at which a school district adopts a budget. 2 of the 3 public places must be places of business or other public locations, and 1 shall be the local newspaper or, if not available, the district's website. Legal advice interprets deliberative and voting sessions of an SB2 meeting to be the only time the school district is convened to act on an operating budget. The report must include 3 line graphs. The first is the average cost per pupil and show previous 10 years of data adjusted for inflation. The second is the average teacher salary, also previous 10 years of data adjusted for inflation. And then third, administrator salaries with previous 10 years of data adjusted for inflation. It must also include 1 table, which shows the top administrator salaries, titles, and current salaries of the 4 highest paid administrators employed or contracted by the district. The report must be printed on 2 18 by 24 pages when posted in public, must be prominently titled Mandatory Report to Voters on School Expenses, and shall display the name of the district. The logo may also be displayed. Line graphs must be clearly labeled per the specifications of the law. No extra commentary or data can be included. Additional information may be posted on separate pages together with or alongside the report. Civil remedies are provided in the law to allow for taxpayers to petition the court for violations. Mandatory report to voters will be publicly posted in Litchfield pursuant to the Students First Act requirements and will be available on the school district website. I'm going to switch here out of my presentation real quick to show you these slides. So this is the first graph that the law referenced, which shows the average cost per pupil. Starting in the lower right-hand corner is 2016, going all the way across to 2025, showing that average cost per pupil over that period of time. The second is the average teacher salary. Again, starting in the lower left-hand corner with the year 2016, going to the year 2025. The third is administrator salaries. Again, starting on the left-hand side in 2016, going to the right, 2025. This is not an average, this is combined. And then the fourth is the top administrator salaries for 2025 and 2026. Moving forward in future budget hearings, we likely will not go through all of the slides in the amount of detail since this is the first year that we did this. We felt it was important to be as transparent as possible and share all of the information in addition to showing the legally obligated slides as well. So with that, I'm going to start by opening it up for any questions as it pertains to the mandatory reporting piece. Are there any questions about the slides or the information that was shown there? If you could just state your name and address, please.
Chris LaFleur, 35 Burgess Drive. On the charts that are the three of them there, is there some sort of regulation about how they're supposed to be scaled on the y-axis?
Sorry, I'm waiting to switch that back.
There is? Okay. Because I mean, I didn't know what the range is. It's hard to see the numbers from where I was sitting, but I didn't know where those were supposed to be, because it looked like the first, like there's a lot of extra range on the first and third chart, and the other two were like right there.
Each of the graphs have specific ways that it has to be scaled. So, yeah, so I'm going to say for, with regard to the average teacher salary, apologies, let me get to that point in the law.
Oh, okay.
And Julie, just while you look that up, right, the other thing to note is, that this is the first year for these reports. I'm Andrew Carter, the chair of the school board. The business administrator has worked with 90 other districts across the state, right, to really make sure that this format is consistent with all the other districts and how we're reporting this information, right? So the
okay.
y-axis is now consistent with all the other districts in the state, very specific to the ranges and the years specifically to the period we're reporting.
So that way, if they overlay them, that it's easier to see.
Correct. And if
Between
you're
all the
doing,
different
and
towns.
if you're doing a comparison across municipalities or towns, this is very consistent.
Okay, that makes sense. Cool. If it's in the RSA, I'll look it up. It just jumps out at me when I'm looking at data, that's all. So,
And that RSA is 189:76.
189.76. Very good.
189.76, yep.
Thank you.
Any other questions pertaining to the mandatory report to voters? Okay. And with that, I will move us to questions on the school warrant articles. Name and address, please.
Andrew Cutter, 6 Moose Hollow. Mr. Chair, if you could go back to Article 5, I think it's not a question, but more of just a highlight, if I may.
Which article? Sorry.
Article 5, please. Right, so given the question earlier about, no money raised from taxation, I want to call out that Article 5 is an article that we are, in fact, raising and appropriating taxes for, and that this is for a very specific purpose. We went to the voters last year for the first year with a plan, and the plan was very specific for information in what we refer to as the on-site insight reports. The district had a study done across each of the buildings, and the on-site insight reports lay out very specific details about capital needs and funding behind needs that allows us to plan strategically for high priority ticket items that we need to start thinking about and being prepared for. What this does in this particular Building and Maintenance Capital Reserve Fund is allowing us to start saving for replacement of the Campbell High School roof, which we're starting to put money away for in preparation for a 2030, 2031 replacement. So this money will allow us to save for things like the roof replacement, HVAC replacement, et cetera. And by taxing this now, it will allow us to have the reserves necessary to be able to tackle that project at that time. Unlike Article 6, you will say as estimated tax impact is 0. Based upon the previous conversations from earlier this evening, this is assuming that at the end of the school year, the school district is obligated to zero out our budget, right? So the town does have a $3+ million surplus, if you will, or reserve that they have to fund other obligations. The school zeroes out their budget. And assuming that there is end-of-year funds, these articles are funded in sequence. So Article 6, then Article 7, then Article 8. If there's only funds for Article 6 and not Article 7, Article 6 is the only one that gets funded. So it works in sequence in order. This particular article, Capital Improvement Expendable Trust Fund, is allowing us to continue to put money aside specifically for the Griffin Memorial Project. Right, this year, for those that follow along, the board was fully intending to put together an article for the voters for essentially a repair and renovation to Griffin Memorial School. What we felt was, given the tax impact to the taxpayers this year with the assessments, plus the desire to get additional information from the contractors we're working with, we decided to hold off this year and wait one additional year for that project. But we want to make sure that we're continuing to fund this particular account, because the reality is before anything that can happen at Griffin Memorial, it's going to be 2 years before that project can kick off. And we need additional funds set aside in this account so we can continue to tackle any additional issues that might arise at Griffin. And further, having the funds in this account will allow us also just to put money towards a bond, a future bond, should that be the desire of the town. Thank you.
Any additional questions on school warrant articles this evening? Go ahead and state your name and address again, please.
Sure. Ronald Blinas, 15 Riverview Circle. And a couple of things. I'll start with the operating budget. One of the things that I brought up at the last budget meeting, I've been thinking a fair amount about, and it's difficult to try to summarize this in a succinct and quick way. But the default budget that is currently in place, I believe, has a surplus built into it that is a carryover from the FY25 budget. I brought that up and asked if I could have some details of where the $1.4 million was underspent, And there had been apparently a report promised by the business administrator. Mr. Cutter referred me instead to the operating budget that's now being considered.
And I do know, Mr. Oblinus, that this has been asked and answered in multiple meetings, multiple emails as well. I have seen the correspondence and the information that has been shared around this particular question.
Yep. And I'm going to report what I have found investigating what Mr. Cutter told me to look at, if that's okay. My assertion is that the default budget, and as it says up there, should this article be defeated, default budget shall be X number of dollars, which is the same as last year. That's the same language that was in last year's budget. And what that means is it takes the approved budget of the previous year and then adds any adjustments for requirements for existing contracts, teachers' contracts, or
Transportation.
transportation, other things that are an obligation that have multiple years of time period. That then becomes the default budget. In 2025, the FY25 budget came in $1.4 million less. I argue that $1.4 million carried over because it was included as the basis for the default budget. My argument is the default budget has $1.4 million of excess in it. I will prove the point, or make the point. What I have done is taken the budget, as Mr. Cutter suggested, and I've taken the 44 individual categories and put them on a spreadsheet so I can see, try to find out where that 1.4 actually accumulates. And what I want to point out is that I will use one line item as a demonstration that the surplus has been carried over into this year's budget. It's line 2225, computer instruction. In FY25, the budget was $118,483. The actual expenditures was $83,912. This year's budget is not the $86,000, or $83,000, excuse me, of the actual. It's the carryover is exactly the same number of $118,483. So while there was surplus in the original budget, that surplus has been carried over into the default budget. This one line item proves my point. So I appreciate that the operating budget seems to be a small increase, but I believe it's actually a more substantive increase when you understand that there is already a surplus that's carried over into the base budget. My second thing I'd like to speak to is the proposed teacher's contract. And these numbers here I brought up represent, let me back up here. The teacher's contract is primarily made up of two elements. The majority of teachers are on what's called a step. And essentially it is an annual increase based upon just an annual increase. And that is typically, and it's 3% just for the step. In addition to that, in this proposal here, there's an additional 3% raise across the board to that. So the net is a 6% in the first year, and compounded to the second year, it is 12% over the 2 years. I've said it before, I believe that's too much. That's above far what I'm getting, and I think the majority of people. I had said previously that if the steps remain at 3%, I think that's a sufficient increase. Additionally, there are other steps that teachers get as they get credits. So it is a opportunity in multiple ways to increase in this, using this step function. Mr. Cutter mentioned that not everyone gets them, but the majority of them do. In fact, the desire is to increase the number of years that qualify. Currently, the number of qualifying years is 15, and after that, there is the implementation of what's called longevity payments. The contract includes increasing the steps by 2 years, from going 15 to 17, demonstrating the desire to continue to use this as a substantive means for teacher salary. So the simple point is, I feel that the 3% increase in addition to the steps is excessive and should be negotiated to a lower figure. Thank you.
Thank you. Any additional questions or comments this evening?
I would just,
Name and
Elizabeth
address,
McDonald,
please.
46 Natticook Ave. His
Thank you.
math is wrong. His math is wrong. I'm not getting a 12% increase. I would be jumping up and down right now if I was getting a 12% increase next year.
Name and address, please.
Derek Barker, 8 Simeon Lane. I'm on the Budget Committee as well, but when Mr. Blanes first came to the Budget Committee and asserted this about the 12% raise, I actually looked at the numbers, and he is correct in one specific situation, and that's in the step one. So step one, every year on the step does increase 3%, and as they go from step one to step two to step three, there's also a 3% raise. So yes, if you compound that over those 3 steps over 3 years, then yes, it ends up as being a 12% raise over that full time. However, as you obviously make more money, the gaps between each of those steps decreases significantly. So if you're at the top step for some reason, for example, each year it's only going up 1.2%. So yes, he's right in one very specific use case, and that's the people at the very, very bottom, which in my personal opinion, and everyone can have their own personal opinion, that makes perfect sense. You're straight out of college, you're making very little money. 3% of $40,000 is not a lot of money. So you make those steps a little bit bigger than you would at the people at the top of the range. So just to clarify the real numbers for everyone to know.
Thank you. Any additional questions or comments on the school warrant articles this evening?
I'll just point out that the numbers are the steps segments, and this is very confusing unless you have the contract. I did not choose the lowest, and I did not choose the highest. I chose in the middle for the purpose of Mr. Barker's point. The difficulty comes is that essentially there's not much difference. The 12%, as the lady said, is not a single year. It is over the 2 years. I want to clarify that. I also want to highlight that Mr. Cutter mentioned that we do need to offer 10 to 12% raises because that's what everybody else does. So I believe this represents, as I talked about, an approximate 12% in that neighborhood for the majority of the teachers.
Any additional comments or questions this evening? Name and address, please.
Sure, Andrew Cutter, 6 Moose Hollow, Chair of the School Board. So if I'm going to be referenced and quoted, I'd like to be quoted properly. The wage increases this year in terms of the contract is highly competitive. What is being presented to the voters this year is very modest at a couple of points, 3 points, 3%. If we do look at our surrounding towns that we do actively compete against, the contracts that are going to voters this year are in the 10 to 12% range. So to get a couple of year contract in front of our voters for 3% is highly competitive and is a value add to our taxpayers. Thank you.
Any final comments or questions this evening on the school warrant articles? Okay. Seeing none, I will use this as an opportunity to let everyone know who's here this evening, as well as anyone who's watching at home, that the next opportunity to come and ask questions and also to make motions is first at the school deliberative, which is on Saturday, January 31st, 10 a.m. here at Campbell High School in the auditorium. And then the town deliberative is the following Saturday, February 7th, 2026, also at 10 a.m. and also here at Campbell High School. Additional information about the Litchfield, additional information about everything presented here tonight. There is a link that is there. These slides will be posted on the Litchfield Budget Committee portal, which is budget.litchfieldnh.gov. And with that, I will close this year's budget hearing. And thank you all for attending. Just as a reminder, the Budget Committee is going to meet down below to vote on revote three warrant articles before we conclude this evening. Thank you all very much.